Most CRO agencies don't fail loudly. Instead, they just slowly waste your time. They fail reasonably, but it's not getting you any results in the end. Today, we're going to go over about 10 of the most common mistakes you need to avoid when you're hiring a CRO agencies. Small little traps that seem smart, but you can definitely avoid before you get into any relationship with these agencies. Okay, number one, vanity metric obsession. It happens so often that you run a test, it all seems perfect, but once you go into production, it doesn't really move the needle. And what you need to look out for is agencies that are obsessed with conversion rate. I know it sounds important, and it definitely is, but eventually the conversion rate is not what pays the bill, it's the revenue that comes in. You could run a test that actually lowers the conversion rate, but increases the average order value, for which the outcome is still much more revenue than it was before. And that's what you need to focus on. This was still a reasonable example, but you've got agencies too who are optimizing for click-through rate or optimizing for product view rate. If these are not contributing to better overall revenue per session or lifetime value, then stay away from these metrics and from these tests. Make sure you focus on what matters, and that is the revenue that comes in. We sometimes have clients that have a subscription business, and here it might be slightly different. Here, a lifetime value is often much more difficult to calculate than just the purchase value, because a lot of the subsequent orders are made offline. These are very hard to track for most A/B testing tools. So there are some exceptions, but generally focus on what really matters and everything else does not. Red flag number 2, guaranteeing results. This is impossible and often even inaccurate. CRO is a probabilistic way of working, not a guarantee. Guaranteeing you that you're going to get 30% more conversions is incorrect. There are so many factors that come into place when you're actually optimizing for conversions. What you could confirm is that you run a test and the test is a winner. But after you go live, the world might have already changed. Politics, the weather, climate, seasonality, whatever it might be. Perhaps you're doing well and you're spending more on ads. Often when you spend more on ads, your conversion rate goes down, especially if it's low quality traffic, which is a lot cheaper to gain, but might convert a lot less. As a business, that might still make sense, right? Get cheap customers, maybe they convert a bit less, but overall it's still very profitable. Because of that, you cannot guarantee conversion rate improvements. You can guarantee a test. You can guarantee your own service that you will generate wins, but you cannot guarantee a plus X% of performance improvement. We ourselves have a service guarantee. So we make sure that we make our clients more money than that we will ever charge. Otherwise, we'll do it for free. So you can still guarantee relationships, guarantee the amount of tests you run, but the results are impossible to guarantee. So if an agency does this to you, stay away from that or clarify things. They must know you cannot guarantee this. Otherwise, they must lack experience. When you draft the agreement, you need to set clear expectations on what you're trying to get out of this relationship. So this could be improving the site, or cleaning up things, or gaining 20 wins. The wins accumulate over 20 tests should be XYZ. You can be specific with the tests that you're running, and those are the data that you can trust. Anything outside of that cannot be trusted, and therefore you should not fall in that trap. Red flag number 2, vague claims without proof. CRO is a data-driven process. Every assumption you make can be tested. Every result you share can be proven. So whenever you're communicating with your agency and they're saying the performance is better, or things are looking good, or we made it, make sure that they're able to show the results. Everything should have a number, especially if they're A/B testing. Right? There's always a winner. Make sure you also check the confidence level and the statistical significance. These are key metrics in confirming that the test is actually completed. You run these tests for a few weeks, a few days, depending on how many testing users you have, right? So if you have 1,000 people on your site, half of them are going to be included in the test. You will have 500 tested users. If you have an A/B test, then 250 users go to each variant. If you have enough data, then you're able to significantly improve the performance. That has to be concluded with statistical significance. And the statistical significance depends on the amount of testing users, but also on the uplift that you're experiencing, or a decrease in performance. The bigger the improvement, the fewer testing users you need, because the data is a lot more conclusive with only a few users. If you're testing something and the performance is only plus 1%, you will probably need an endless amount of users to get to statistical significance where the confidence level is 90% or above. So you really need to make sure that whenever you conclude a test and you trust the results coming in from your agency, that you rely on the statistical significance that proves things are confirmed and proven that what they're saying is true. So CRO is a data-driven approach. Make sure everything can be backed up by reports and that their claims are always proven to you. Red flag number 4, design first, data later. That is something you never want to hear. Everybody always gets excited to build something new and to design something incredible, but you don't know what you need to do without looking at the data first. What we often do is that we start with the data analysis. We identify where are things going wrong? Where in the funnel for an e-commerce store are most users dropping off, where they should not be? That's where you need to focus your attention. And then you need to figure out where or why are these users dropping off, with a heuristic review where we analyze the UI and the UX. What kind of elements are on the page that are not providing clarity or are causing friction, or what can we add to increase the motivation from the users to proceed to the next step? Data first is key. CRO is a data-driven business approach, and you need to make sure you first understand the numbers before you start building. If someone redesigns the PDP page in week 1, I'm sure they've not carefully reviewed all the data. This is a huge approach, building a whole new page. So you need to make sure that you do that with confidence and that you believe that this is what you need to do first, because otherwise you're wasting time that you could have spent on something that moves the needle much more, and it's a lot easier to implement. Red flag number 5, running cheap and easy tests. If you give your users a discount, I'm sure they will purchase more. If you give your users free gifts or more benefits, they will purchase more. So there are some tests that are just a lot easier to run and quick wins to keep you engaged with the agency and to hopefully earn a few more bucks and keep you on the retainer a bit longer. But there are other tests that are much more difficult. How to retain users, how to increase subscription rate. These are a lot more challenging than running some cheap discount or coupon tests that always work. These agencies are often focused on the short term, quick wins, but this is not sustainable to always have that discount or coupon or whatever on the site for the rest of the lifetime of the business. You need to make sure you add the perceived value, you increase the perceived value, and don't throw with discounts all the time. It could work depending on Black Friday or whatever promotion or campaign, but know that these are short-term wins and they would win even if you don't test them. So be very careful trusting agencies that are only running these cheap ass tests. Red flag number 6, not being a team player. CRO consists of multiple expertise. You got a designer, you got a strategist, you got a developer, you got someone who runs the A/B test. You most likely have a project manager or an account manager. There are multiple people involved in this process. And the CRO agency only wants to make money, but you also want to protect the brand. So someone who is doing the CRO for your company needs to make sure that they understand the essence of the brand, that they understand what's within the boundaries of the brand guidelines. If you have an internal developer, the developer might have to work with the agency to actually implement these changes into the tests or even into production if it has become a winner. There are multiple people involved, and this is often where it goes wrong. One of the most common reasons why things go wrong, where the client does not work well together with the agency. And the owner of the brand, of course, wants to improve performance, but there are multiple employees involved in this that have to approve on these changes and have to work together with the CRO agency. Especially if you're running more complicated tests. Let's say you have a product page, but you got 1,000 products. There's a certain template used on the product page that needs to be replicated, perhaps, and adjusted to a new version. There is a database involved, so there's a developer who owns that database. If this is on Shopify, it's much easier. But if you have a custom built website, you definitely have to sort these things out before you start the engagement. Red flag number 8, the lack of business or industry context or knowledge. It's crucial that you really understand the business and the industry that they're in before you take on a CRO project. You need to make sure that you understand what our competitors are doing, what is actually my client doing, what sets them apart. Understanding this from day one is incredibly challenging. But over time, you will better understand how customers behave on this particular site. How does the marketing work? What are your unique selling points? What are competitors doing? But it's crucial that you work with a CRO agency that's investing their time in really understanding all these little factors to make sure that they completely understand your expectations, that they stay on brand, but also that they understand what's expected from the marketplace for our consumer. This is something that takes time and is challenging, but it's definitely worth taking someone on that's willing to invest their time and effort in understanding your business and not only coming in to earn a quick buck. Red flag number 9, and this is a good one. Be aware of agencies that are poor at communicating or have a black box reporting system. You as the owner wants to have access to the actual data they rely on. You need access to the A/B testing tool. It happens so often that we get new clients on that worked with other agencies before, but they never had access. This is just so important because all their results depend on this, on the statistical significance metric, on the A/B testing tool. If you work with an agency, you do want to have access to this tool so you can actually confirm whatever they're saying is true, but also that you own all these tests. You own all these assets that have been built. You can even look into them if you want to. It happens so often that clients don't even know what variants they ran or how the design is set up. When the agency leaves, they take everything with them. That's not what you want. You want to keep the data, keep the learning. And it's not only about the wins, because most will still be a fail, but those are even more important to learn from. What has been tested? Why did it work? Why did it not work? Especially what should we not test again? If you don't have a log of this, you're only going to waste time figuring this out again and again. Also, if a client or your agency says, this is our PDF with all the test results, every month we'll communicate this with you, that's not what you should go for. You need clean communication, you need actual proof, you need to have access, you need to be on a call, you need to make sure that their reporting is top-notch and it's custom to what you need. But it's not built by them, ideally. You don't want any fancy reporting or statistical calculations done by hand in a Google Sheet. Ideally, you rely on a tool, a proven tool. If they use an A/B testing tool that you've never heard of before, make sure you look it up. Make sure it's legit and it's not some custom implementation that you're not on board with. There are too many things that can go wrong, and especially when it comes to tracking. So whenever you communicate with your agency, make sure you have clarity on everything and they are super transparent on how everything is going. Anything that they might be hiding, that's something you might need to look into because maybe you should know about that. Red flag number 9, creeping costs. Whenever you engage with a marketing agency, make sure you have a clear agreement set up initially that includes whatever they're responsible for and whatever incurred costs they're allowed to send to you afterwards. As I mentioned earlier, A/B testing includes many people and many different parts to make it work. Make sure that the agreement that you have with them includes everything and that they clearly communicate to you beforehand what could be the possible cost they did not include and they might charge me for afterwards. At the beginning, you're excited to get started, but these are the small things you need to make sure that you have set up right. Think about a long-term relationship where it works for both of you, rather than something that might work in the short term because it feels better and you want to avoid confrontation. Make sure that if they are designing, developing, testing, or even after a win, that it gets implemented into the actual production of the site, or even maybe the A/B testing tool, which could be very pricey, up to $2,000 or sometimes even more, depending on how much traffic you got. So make sure you cover all these costs and you have clarity on what you might expect. And now we're at red flag number 10. Make sure you stay away from agencies that are only going for big swings. You want to make sure that you test to learn, not only to get results. If you go for big swings, it might be a lot more likely that you only have failure. Failing is important, but you need to know why something did not work. So what we normally do is if a site is really lacking fundamental CRO practices, we might first make a new design that already looks decent to get to a better level. And then incrementally, we try to make improvements with smaller tests. The benefit of smaller tests is that you can move much quicker. Building a completely new PDP requires perhaps even a legal review and copy review and imagery, and it gets very complicated. But if you can tweak small things, you can move much quicker, you can see what works, and then you can learn what should work over time. What we often see is that with big swings, you might not even get bigger results. And even tweaking smaller things can give you a 20-30% improvement in conversion rate. So don't be afraid only doing big things. Try to focus as well on smaller tests. So when you work with an agency, look out for this. See if they're going big or they're going very technical with their changes. Often when they don't really know what to change, then they might come up with a completely new design. But if they're very strategic about what works and what doesn't, then make sure that you review the small changes that they're making, so you know that you're working with the right agency. So there you have it, the 10 red flags you need to be looking out for when you're working with a CRO agency. A CRO isn't about hacks or shortcuts. It's about discipline, trust, and communication. Knowing these red flags hopefully saves you time and money. If you're interested, I can show you what a proper CRO setup looks like. Or if you have any questions about a contract that you're about to sign with your current agency, just let me know. Even if you don't work with us, that's totally fine. I'm just happy to help and point out if there's something I would find suspicious. So just let me know if you need any help. Thanks a lot for watching and see you in the next one.